And now, the union side.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
A little goofy, sorry. You know, Friday programs we record on Thursdays, and in program note, I apologize for those of you who were thinking that last night we would have His Honor, the Executive Director of the National Education Association, Bob Walsh, on to refute our guests from Wednesday night, Angel DeVeris and Charlie Lombardi, the former mayor of Providence and the current mayor of North Providence. The former mayor is the lead lawyer on the new announced lawsuit to take the cities and towns into litigation against the state for the continuing contract bill that the legislature passed last year. Anyway, we flipped the shows for content reasons, and so Mr. Walsh is here tonight. So there you have it, and we shall get into it. Here is the headline and the coverage from midweek when 16 towns said we're suing our own state leadership.
Providence to Woonsocket to Burrillville, 16 city and town leaders suing Governor Gina Raimondo, House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello, and Senate President Dominic Ruggiero over the law that allows public sector union contracts to continue past their expiration dates while a new deal is still being negotiated.
As we all know, it makes it astronomically harder to get concessions during difficult financial times.
This new law creates a floating finish line, or should I say an imaginary finish line, to all of our labor contracts.
I think it's kind of a case of sour grapes. I really don't get it.
Bob Walsh, head of the NEA Rhode Island Teachers Union, says the bill codified what was already standard practice during negotiations.
It makes no sense to me for them to spend hard-earned taxpayer dollars on a lawsuit that will go nowhere and is ultimately frivolous.
But the municipal leaders say the law takes away local control, ultimately hurting taxpayers. The leaders of East Greenwich and Woonsocket say the law is already applying to union contracts currently under negotiation. Raimondo did veto a previous version of this legislation, but the mayors were unable to convince her to veto it this year.
Obviously, we don't agree with that position. It's a pretty narrow bill, and you know, we're prepared to defend it.
And so, welcome.
Thank you. Always good to be here.
So, Angel, always good to have you. I need to have my game face on whenever you show up. I may or may not, depends. Sometimes you think you have it, you don't. Sometimes you didn't think you have it, and you do.
Me too.
Before we get into the merits, you're usually good in offering me objective history. So give me some objective history on this.
Okay, objective history is fairly straightforward. And we had to talk about this when we talked about the bill itself. Public employees got collective bargaining in the late 1960s in Rhode Island. It came in two flavors. Police and firefighters had the right to binding arbitration to resolve contract disputes. All the others, teachers, support staff in the schools, municipal employees, did not. They did have non-binding arbitration on financial issues, binding on the non-financial issues. And that's the way it was forever. What happened when a contract expired? Sometimes teachers went on strike. That was not allowed under the law, but it happened.
Illegal, right.
Sometimes they just stayed in mediation until it got done without a strike. Sometimes they went work to rule. So they continued talking. They were doing things, activities only under the contract to send the message that this was serious stuff. But never, until 10 years ago, was a contract unilaterally imposed upon teachers until that happened in East Providence. Now, they tried. In the early 1990s, they tried to do that in Warwick, and the court said, essentially, keep talking till you get it done. So for the first 42 years of collective bargaining in Rhode Island, other than police and fire, which could go to binding arbitration, the contract stayed in effect. This thing happened in East Providence. We obviously disagreed with that.
And specifically, so everyone's clear, what happened
in East Providence?
I recall.
They ran. East Providence had an odd teacher contract expiration date of Halloween, October 31st. So they did exactly what the law required. They did 30 days of negotiations, 30 days of mediation, 20 days of arbitration, not binding on financial issues. The arbitration award came down at the end of the year, and the school committee said, we reject the arbitrator's recommendation And in the past when that happened, the parties kept talking until they reached an agreement. But what happened in East Providence, they said, we reject the arbitrator's recommendation and we're just going to impose this contract on you. For the first time ever in Rhode Island history, they said, these are your new wages, these are your new health care benefits. So it wasn't a negotiated deal. So that's what we objected to, that it was no longer negotiations. It no longer met the tenor of the law. We started the court process there. The situation about a year later resolved itself. We got a negotiated subsequent deal and making...
But you never got a court decision.
We never got, we got a lower level court decision. We never took it to the Supreme Court. And then we did what anyone who disagrees with things that happen in the court should do. We went to the legislature and said, we always thought it was this way. The practice for 42 years was this way, and we're just trying to codify the practice that we had lived successfully under. Both sides had lived successfully under. And it took us 10 years to get that legislation passed. Now, for a lot of that time, we were tied up in the pension lawsuit. So we were in the position the cities and towns were. We were suing the state of Rhode Island. But unlike the cities and towns, we had standing to sue the state of Rhode Island because we were allowed to do that as outside players under, ironically, the same clause, the contract clause of the state constitution. The United States Supreme Court has always ruled cities and towns, essentially being creatures of the state of Rhode Island, do not have standing to sue a state. So this is why, and you saw the clip in the news, I am truly puzzled by this lawsuit. They should do what the folks who, the 23 communities in the state that aren't part of this lawsuit are. If they don't like a law that passed, go to the legislature and try and pass a different law. I am in the unique position, probably ever, Dan, of sitting on your show saying, the governor's with me, the Speaker of the House is with me, the President of the Senate is with me on this, the United States Supreme Court is with me on this. I don't get why they're bringing this lawsuit forward at taxpayer expense.
Okay.
I get they're mad.
Got it.
They don't like it.
All right.
I get that they're mad.
So that's the end of the show.
Well, it
It's
kind of is.
just-
It's
just-
to me that's simple. They're trying to add another argument.
What do you think about
in.
those Patriots?
Well, we're always got
No,
one
so-
loss under our belt, so we'll be fine.
So you know, it's too bad. What you should have said, or what should not have made the edit from floor in the eyewitnesses package, is your rationale for the legal part. Because now I'm stumped.
But
I feel like
we come on your show to talk in depth about these issues, not the 2 minutes
no
we get
kidding.
on the.
And that's why
on the
I'm
news.
thankful.
And that's why I'm glad
and
to be
now
here.
I got to bring you back with Angel Tavares, which I'm sure you'll take all comers, and I got to bring him back here for some response to that, because in so many cases, a meritorious debate eludes us if those who are bringing it to the table don't have standing. So if you're suggesting that, in other words, it's like saying, look, you'd like to see the two guys fight in the ring, but if they don't make the weight, they can't fight in the ring. Meaning,
Well,
you're saying
I can do part of his argument in his absence, and he can, and then I'm happy to come back and do it with him here.
Well, that would be a real added value bonus.
His
to the
next
show. Thank you.
argument would be, he'll say, well, we have a home rule charter provision in our state constitution.
Which is one of his two main
Which
arguments.
is his second argument. His first is the contract clause, his
Right.
second is the home rule charter provision. That passed in 1951, I think, in Rhode Island. And in the court filing they left out the first line of the home rule charter provision. And the first line says that the General Assembly, as long as it this is layman's terms, as long as it equally applies the law to all communities, can do that. It just can't do things that are specific to a community without local voter approval. So if they went and said, Cumberland, you have to give up your reservoir for the greater good of the state, that would probably require local voter approval. But if they said everybody had to give up their reservoirs for the good of the state, they probably could do that. In this case, because they have already passed long ago the State Labor Relations Act, and they made these laws apply to everybody for teacher negotiations and municipal negotiations, again, I think that argument is a hollow argument, because the Home Rule Charter has a specific exception for the General Assembly making a law that applies to everyone. But all right, let's say I lose that argument.
Good, stop. Let's say you lose that argument. Let's talk about the merits of the bill when we come back. Stay with us.
There's no doubt that the power has shifted to the organized labor. I don't think there's any doubt. That's what the lawsuit is all about.
That was
We
what
want
the
to
General Assembly's legislation's motives were, it seems to me.
Well, it seems to me that their statement and the impact are just totally different. I think that there's no doubt the statement says it's a level playing field, and I think that the facts are really that it's not a level playing field. I think that there's a reason that the unions are upset about it. You got so many phone calls yesterday that Mr. Walsh has talked about it because they understand this is a very big deal for them. They've been working very long to try to do that. It's in our complaint in terms of all the years they've been working to try to get this law passed, and it's a very big deal for them.
So we were talking about with Angel Tavares, lead counsel for the 16 cities and towns that are suing the state over the continuing contract legislation that was passed last session. We were talking about the playing field. I was reacting to folks who called my show after the announcement of the press conference on the radio site on WPRO, where a lot of labor perspective was offered that towns could string out a union by not coming to the table, and now this kind of switches that influence, that power. Truth be told, if the terms or the compensation terms in this particular version of the bill are continuous in lieu of a new contract, in tough times, and you've been through them, we've all been through them, a union can say, we're good. To avoid pay decreases, pension cuts, benefit cuts, that kind of thing. I think we should all stipulate to that. I mean, I think that is one of the impacts of this.
With a slight exception, the vast majority of the pension situation is governed at the state level. There are a few municipalities that still have their own pension systems.
But even vacations and other benefits and whatever else.
And the circuit breaker becomes layoffs. The circuit breaker becomes job reductions. So if you're in a situation, and we talked about this obviously in the testimony to the bill, so what would be first of all, you can't artificially delay negotiations. That's an unfair labor practice. You're in a totally different realm then, and you can, get in trouble for that. So either side can be vulnerable to an unfair labor practice. You are compelled, both parties are compelled to negotiate in good faith. And the other circuit breaker in the law is you can call in the mediator, and then you can go to the non-binding on the financial issue arbitration, but get all the other language issues done. There's an incentive for both sides to settle all the time. But you're right, a slight delay can say, well, if times are tough and the proposal is for a huge pay cut or something. But remember, under state law, that Senate 3050 provision that passed years ago, you get locked into your prior year's budget after a certain point of time. So if you sit on your hands and do nothing, you're working with the old budget in a second year because you haven't raised your taxes to or your budget level to account for it.
On the issue of the layoffs, Kev, can we roll that second piece of video we have? Charlie Lombardi, North Providence Mayor, reacts to that.
If I were a paying member of any one of those unions, I probably wouldn't contribute any longer when the union's saying, well, you could lay him off. You could lay off one of my brothers and sisters instead of agree to sit down. I mean, is that the answer? I don't know of any mayor, manager, or administrator in the state of Rhode Island that would enjoy to lay off any of their employees.
But it's also something you had in your pocket anyway. It's like, well, no kidding. Of course we can lay off.
Well, there's also the other side of that is what impact does that have on overtime? What impact does it have on increased costs if you lay someone off? So I think that those will all be issues that we'll address. But the truth of the matter is also in a situation in a school when you need so many teachers, you can't just lay them off. So this idea that the layoff is somehow the saving grace of it, I don't think will hold water, but ultimately the court will decide.
Which one of those mayors am I supposed to believe? The one that fired all the teachers or the one that voted for Trump? I mean, come on. Well, I think they might have enjoyed.
Tavares fired all the teachers.
Angel, when he was mayor, fired all the teachers.
He gave them
Charlie
all,
voted
he gave them
for
all
Trump.
Notice in order to be able to.
He fired them all. It was, he did.
Did most of them end up back in their jobs?
Yes, they did. I was at one of those protest rallies outside
By the way,
City
that's not
Hall.
your union anyway. So what do you worry
Well, I had solidarity. Apparently, Charlie's in solidarity with all the union members in the state because he's right. We don't want anyone to be laid off. So why shouldn't I be in solidarity with my union brothers and sisters?
His point is for your side to say, hey, listen, if you really got to solve the
No,
problem.
but
You
the
can lay
point
you
is
can
that
lay our
there are
members
circuit
off. I mean,
breakers, and those are the type of proposals they make. But for the vast majority, I would flip it the other way. I don't think any mayor should ever contemplate enjoying imposing a contract on anyone that wasn't negotiated through collective bargaining, especially the Democrats. So why are they objecting to this return to a 42-year practice that they would never be able to prove in court if they have standing?
Well, the League of Municipal Cities
was
and
a
Towns
problem.
makes a point, which is that, listen, you know, we have, all we wanted was mutual agreements to extend. That's all they wanted.
No, that was their fallback position when they knew they were in trouble in the legislature. They came in with this fallback.
But to your point, though, most mayors and city administrators, leaders of municipalities, don't want to be in that imposition place.
Mutual agreement implies that you've negotiated, and why should they negotiate it if they now have already stated publicly that this has cost them leverage? So it's kind of a catch-22 on their side too.
Well, they're mutual
The
catch-22s
only place
here.
that made sense was buttoning up a loophole that existed, because this was also always applied to the folks that had binding arbitration, and the firefighters passed, on the behalf of the firefighters and police officers, the contract stays in effect until the new contract comes in place legislation, only because someone challenged that. Now, they have binding arms, so at the end of that process, they're going to have a brand new contract, but in that gap period, they wanted to ensure that the contract stayed in effect. So it's it's apples and oranges.
Notwithstanding the standing issue and all that kind of stuff, one more thing that I think is interesting. If I'm the mayor of a community and I'm looking at a 3-year normal contract cycle, but you know, I've got a little bit of a willy about where the economic realities are going to be 4 and 5 and 6 years down the line. I'm going to hold my line in where I might be doing, for lack of better comparison, a 3.33% increase in salaries over 3 years. I might be holding on to 1.11 simply because if we can't make a deal 3 years from now, I don't want to be on the hook for that kind of dough. I'm not sure in the long run what you've won by doing this.
No, we didn't. No, I wanted binding arbitration. All we won was we went back to the status quo that worked for 42 years because we had a status quo that we lost. It was a setback. The courts, through this decision that occurred in East Providence, set the playing field off level.
Giving
it was no longer
giving the
a level
taxpayer
playing field.
Representatives more leverage.
Well, it gave
Yes.
It gave more leverage in the sense it was
God
no longer a
forbid
level
ever, even though
playing
you
field.
are a taxpayer, that you give the taxpayers an
here's
edge in
the
anything
interesting
that you
and
do.
it was in violation of
Ever,
the existing law, because the whole point,
You're
and this
ignoring
is a quote from the law, it's in the public interest that equality of bargaining power be established and maintained, and this made things unequal. So we were trying to get back to equal.
What's going to be fascinating is you're not a party to the case. You'll probably add briefs.
If invited to, or even if you can do it without being invited, I think that
come back
on
for a conversation between
side.
you and hopefully Angel DeVeris. I hope he takes that, or any one of
I
the
would
league's
think,
people.
because he's going to have to answer the
But the
question
standing
to his
issue's gotta be
clients.
right.
Right.
The
I
standing
mean,
issue's
here's a
gotta
quote
be
from an existing Supreme Court decision. It is doubtful that a municipality has standing to challenge a state statute under the Rhode Island Constitution. With the probable exception, it can challenge an act of the General Assembly imposed upon it's a violation of the Home Rule Amendment. So, and we already talked about the Home Rule Amendment. A violation of the Home Rule Amendment would be something specific to an individual community, not something that applies to all communities.
Well,
so they lose at the get-go.
Your suggestion that they could lobby the legislature for a change is, I mean, that ship is
They
sailed.
do that all the
it seems to me.
time. No,
Sure
well, they can lobby on anything they want. They could say, because some of them are saying they'd rather have binding arbitration. And I've said I'd rather have binding arbitration. Let's talk. They want to talk? We can talk about that.
We got one other thing we want to get to. Stay with us. On a rather, how would you say, argumentatively benign issue, but important nonetheless, the 2019 Mental Health Summit, the NEA Rhode Island is engaging educators on what? Seeing signs, being better informed, professional development on things that are coming up all too often in the classroom.
All of those issues.
Yeah.
Everyone forgets, because it's more interesting in the news to talk about the things we're disagreeing on. There are many things we agree on, and one of the things we agree upon the most is the rising role of mental health issues affecting our student population. In the last year and a half or so, the governor asked do a tour of meeting with our folks with an open agenda other than don't talk about the pension issue, talk about what's really going on in the classroom. And the original nexus of that was, the guns in the schools issue. And every one of those roundtable conversations quickly turned to the role of mental health and mental health professional development
What will
training
they
in the
learn?
schools.
This is voluntary for teachers?
Voluntary for teachers. A lot of teachers and education support professionals have professional development requirements that are embedded into their contract and their own professionalism. So those that need those credits can get those credits by attending this all-day session on Saturday. But even those who don't need those credits, who choose to attend, are going to get a lot of valuable information about dealing directly with students, dealing with their colleagues, dealing with parents, dealing with the community on how mental health, destigmatizing the issue, first of all, that it's okay to talk about, it's okay to deal with these issues, how it impacts classroom, because it's on the...
We need more counselors.
We absolutely need more counselors.
Our
we need more
ratio in Rhode
counselors.
Island is terrible.
We need
The
more
national
counselors.
ratio
We
is
need more
terrible.
school psychologists. We need more social workers. If we're going to start talking about the schools as the social center of communities where everything happens, and there's so many things external to the schools that affect performance in the schools, we have to meet people where they are. And where they are right now is grappling with a lot of these issues that, we're the same age. This was not talked about when we were kids the way it's talked about now. I don't know if rightfully we're much more aware of issues, or if the stresses of what's going on in the world today are having an impact, or if it's a combination of all those things. But this is real. That's an issue too. By the way, that's an issue not only as a distraction, the cell phone, it's an issue for bullying, it's an issue for how kids interact with each other, it's how they interact with their parents, and that's just a subset
Social
of the
media
many
political
issues.
attacks, back and forth,
It's-
blah, blah, blah,
it's-
da, da, da,
right. They're starting to behave like us.
present company included. But all seriousness, again, the date is what date?
This Saturday, so it's...
it's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow,
It's
because we're
tomorrow.
on Friday
And
night.
it's being held
tomorrow.
where? At the-
It's Cole Middle School in East Greenwich.
So any
Happy
teachers
to,
that are watching
host
this thing,
them.
show up.
If you haven't signed up, sign up.
Right.
It's important, and it's part of an ongoing. This is the second one we've done, and I expect either in the large format of an all-day or the continuing professional development we do at our office on a weekly basis for our members, that this is going to be one of the topics that we will be addressing for the rest of our careers.
It's amazing what a teacher has to deal with today.
It is remarkable.
I don't know
and
if
this is why
our
we lose them.
teachers, as you referenced our teachers just said, or whether it's, I think there's just too much going on now. There's just too much
I think there's a
going
lot
on.
more going on now. And maybe part of it is what they see in the media and what they read, but there's just a lot of stresses that outside the school that come right into the schoolhouse.
Hope teachers take advantage of that tomorrow.
And thanks for letting us talk about it for a few
We'll put it
minutes.
up on the web too, on foxprovince.com in case you missed it, and link to the NEA. All right, we'll check on that standing issue. We'll have you back. Thank you, pal. Appreciate that.
Always a pleasure.
Bob Walsh from the NEA. Final word when we come back. I noticed on my phone that the state Republican Party is now fundraising. They're using the battle that Donald Trump is engaged in as a means to raise some money to defend Trump, stand with the president, and send money to the state Republican Party. I can't get an answer or an opinion from the state Republican Party on the entire impeachment controversy, yet they're going to raise money on its back? See you Monday. Have a great weekend.